Hey there, Goa fans. This is Mark DJ Solitaire here with episode 162 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which I share in each episode one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. So we are continuing our exploration of tracks that I first came across in the 98-99 season, so largely from the autumn of 98 through to the end of the summer of 99. And this kind of qualifies because there's two versions of this track. And I got my hands on the alternate version, I remember, on the tail end of the summer of 99, when post Solips and European travel, I went back to London and I stayed with a friend of mine who had lived in Tokyo in sort of the heyday when I was there, 95, 96, 90, that whole period. And I remember used to be at a lot of the same parties. And so we knew each other, just from being at parties and never really spent that much time together. And so I was, crashed out at his place in Seven Sisters. So apparently the Pleiadians have a chapter in London. They have their own station. And one of his friends came over one day, a party guy, who didn't look like a real Goa guy, and he had brought some DATs, and we did a little trading session, and there was this alternate mix that I had been long looking for that ties back to a story in 97 and a track that was released in 98. So this is a nice big sort of fun, colorful story. So this goes back to, I think it's either summer, like July-ish 97, or sometime in the autumn, in a couple of months following that. I was on one of my visits to the Twisted HQ, the Twisted Records office in London. And Simon Holtum, the manager there, said, "Hey, I just got this really cool DAT. We should give it a listen." And it was four tracks, two mixes, two versions of each by Fools and Tools, or known as FAT for short. And this was a project, a collaborative project of Markus from Extreme and Planet Ben. Now, I've featured one of the Hundreds of Sunsets mixes earlier in this series. So now we're going to look at the other one, Itchy and Scratchy. But to get back to that story, I remember standing there in the middle of the office, and, just sort of the sweet spot for the speakers that was on, one end of the wall, these really sort of, I remember these tall speakers. And I stood there and I couldn't move for the four tracks because I was just like, what is this? The sound was incredible, this big rolling bass in all of the tracks. The engineering was impeccable, and musically, it was like, wow. And I definitely remember being particularly taken with one that was really dramatic and orchestral and, really my kind of big operatic kind of thing. And it turns out that that was one of the mixes of Itchy and Scratchy. By the way, at that same session after that, I really got my sort of standing hours in because he put on, that was for the first time for me, and The Day Turned to Night by Spangle. It was like, what a day. It was just like, I did not know what hit me with all of this incredibly innovative music. So when I was leaving London in February 98, I was well stocked with a number of items, and one of them was a white label test pressing of the Fools and Tools vinyl Twisted, which would come out in May that year. And that had Hundreds of Sunsets on one side as a real favorite. And I much prefer that vinyl version to the one on the on CD on Dim Entertainment, which has one line ripped out, which I think is really, I love that line. But anyway, both versions are incredible. And Itchy and Scratchy. And the version that Twisted put out is one that's really got more emphasis on the breakbeat rhythm. And it is pretty darn cool. The other one, though, I didn't know at the time that Twisted and Blue Room had both been approached by the musicians to release the single. And it got so far that Blue Room had actually pressed a couple of test pressings, which had Itchy and Scratchy on one side and Hundreds of Sunsets on the other. And the version of Itchy and Scratchy on the Blue Room one is the unreleased one that I got on DAT in the summer of '99, but which I had heard when I was sort of standing at that sweet spot in the Twisted office. So the whatever it is that happened, that the artists were sort of communicating with both labels, and Blue Room, thought they had a deal, and for some reason, the artists ended up going to Twisted, and so it's not entirely clear what happened. Just a misunderstanding in terms of who'd agreed to do what with whom, and so Twisted ended up releasing the other version. Now, this ended up being really perfect for the gig where I gave this, at the very least, the Canadian premiere, when I was invited to play just before moving to Tokyo, a few days before I ended up back in Tokyo in March 98, rather. On March 15th, the Ides of March, I played at a street level party in Vancouver behind the art gallery on a Sunday afternoon. And I could only play 4 tracks. I had a 30-minute set. There was a bunch of people. We think sets now are too short, but this was a different kind of event. And I was the only one playing, Goa style. And so everybody else it was a lot more house and breaks. And I thought, well, this would be a perfect track to start with to sort of ease them into more, this four on the floor kind of stuff that it was going to be playing. Although I'm not sure if this track is really eases anyone into anything because it's pretty intense as it is. I also had to start with vinyl because I knew with the 4 tracks, I had to alternate because of the tech setup that I couldn't plug 2 different DAT players into the system. So I had to do vinyl, DAT, vinyl, DAT. And because I knew I wanted to end on DAT with the Delta, I knew I had to start on vinyl so that it could alternate. So it was kind of a perfect confluence of factors that led to me choosing to start this set with Itchy and Scratchy. And sure enough, it went off pretty explosively. The crowd loved it. I love it as well, even though I'm less of a breakbeat kind of guy because it's got all of those other elements that, of course, we love from both Extreme and Delta, Markus projects, and of course, Planet Ben. So I should add that on the Twisted vinyl, it said that this was edit 37. However, on the Blue Room vinyl, it says that Hundreds of Sunsets was edit 37. Which one is which is unclear. In any case, we've got the vinyl version of Itchy and Scratchy on the Twisted vinyl, and which ended up on, various digital things. It certainly was on Go Ahead Volume 7, one of those great Nova Tech compilations. And the other one was never released. So I'm going to play both. We're going to listen. I'll do reactions to both the commercially released version and the one that was on the Blue Room test pressing. But at the end, I'll just play I'm not going to put the unreleased full version at the end of this. We'll just have the released one. I still do play, generally because of how my style is, and the kind of music I'm into, the more when I'm playing a night set, the more dramatic orchestral stuff, I'll play the unreleased version. It's pretty terrific. There are incidentally 3 test pressings only that are known to have survived of the Blue Room one of which you can see in these images, thanks to a delightful Swedish collector friend of mine. So without further ado, how about we get started and we listen to this incredible track by Markus of Extreme and Ben from Planet Ben, otherwise known as Fools and Tools, and the fantastic released version of Itchy and Scratchy. So nice, cool atmospheric noise, which both artists were great at doing. It's kind of the sounds of outer space. Interesting pulse happening there too, which I often haven't noticed listening on vinyl. And then this needs more cowbell. We have this sort of approaching chime-like sound. And then this sound that just seems to like rip through the fabric of the universe. And really powerful stuff. Okay, so here I am like easing everybody into it, I said, right, with breakbeats, breakbeaty stuff that's coming. Pretty intense, isn't it? Listen to that. Incredible. Okay. Again, all this, like, this is before radio came out, right? So all of this, like, unbelievable noise. I mean, this was just, I mean, you think in 98, and I heard this in 97. I mean, this is just like a quality of sound and production and music making that was just a whole other level. So again, all of these voices communicating. It's like all these beings who are, from another dimension who are saying stuff. I love that extra little thing that comes in there. And again, just these patterns that repeat. Now we get that crunchy stuff. It really opens up that upper frequency, doesn't it? That voice comes in. That was a cool one. So cool little pause in the proceedings here. Cool syncopation there. And notice not too high, right? So sort of mid-range hi-hat, it sounds like. And you get that. So just very intense with the rhythmic elements. Just a lot of texture. Notice the rhythm here. This whole section is just, again, like this radio tuning in and out with these voices. The rhythm change. I mean, this radio is like switching between radio stations, just incredible. Little song there. There comes the crunchy beats again. Incredibly fat bass. I mean, fat is a pretty good acronym for the band. This is wild. And then I mean, if this doesn't sound like some very Germanic music to be dancing to in the dark, I don't know what is. And those higher cymbals. And real. The percussion department's pretty busy over here. Just gnarly. Now we get this whole voice, right? Rather than just the chopped up bits that we had before. It's going on a bit of a rant. And then it just all suddenly starts to unwind. And it's going to end with one last. I mean, what the? You can imagine the impression that that made, sort of in the latter half of 1997, standing in this office of one of, I think, the great labels of our scene, listening to this off of a DAT and just going like, what the heck was that? And I'm not really a breakbeats guy. And I've featured, Metal Spark and Sibilant before, right, with the lighter breakbeats. I love that. And, the big crunchy stuff, generally not. But this is different because it's got that really atmospheric, spacey, otherworldly alien voices sort of folding out of the fabric of time and space kind of thing going on. Now, I never got a copy at the time, right? I just got the white label pressing sort of early in 98 before leaving London. And I didn't get a DAT copy of the other one. So as I said, later in 99, I got my hands on a DAT copy, which obviously was circulating, and whether it was copied from some people who had the vinyl test pressing from Blue Room or a DAT copy, I very graciously accepted in a DAT trade this phenomenal track. And we're going to listen to that one now. So you'll hear all of the common elements that are here, but there's more. And the arrangement, of course, is different, but this has a lot more melodic stuff. This content in this one is more, pitched, as I've been talking about, but not like something singable per se. This one's got different elements. And it is really, it's kind of Juno-esque, Delta-esque with that more melodic, operatic, harmonic content. And it's pretty unbelievable. So let's listen now to the alternate mix, the unreleased mix of Fools and Tools, Itchy and Scratchy. We'll start off with some more of that atmospheric sound. And there's those, the cowbell or those chimes coming in. And we're going to get that very familiar sound ripping through. Oh no, guess we start with the breakbeats. Forgot. So it just starts the opening with this, and then it's going to shift directions pretty quickly. So another round. Notice that sort of otherworldly squeal in the background. And then hey, kind of a different entry. Right, so again, the real lower frequency stuff with some beautiful interjections from higher up. Now we have that rhythmic stuff in the background. Right, so it's still a little bit, it's stripped down, just a very different arrangement so far. There's that voice coming in. A little bit more metallic here. So we haven't gotten really into the full-on melodic harmonic stuff. That's going to come later on. So far, what we still have is all that pitch stuff, all these patterns, each voice that really sounds like, an algorithmic pattern. We're just getting started. Oh, here we go. That was a very different kind of voice from another dimension. Okay, little pause again. We'll get some of those voices. Alright, so now we get those radio transmissions. It's really like you can imagine in outer space, or somehow they're tuning into Earth-like radio signals. I've seen that in movies before, I think at the beginning of Contact. Hi, honey, I'm home. I've never actually noticed that before. Okay, so we're back into this chunky percussive section. Again, wonderful. I mean, all these different layers of percussion, with the rhythm. Bit of syncopated stuff happening. And that squeal, it gets added. Just love that voice. Okay, so far, I mean, it's largely a different arrangement, one extra voice, nothing majorly pitched yet or tonally, but stay tuned for what's coming now. Notice this kick. Ooh, key change. And buckle your seatbelts for what's coming here. So we have both this operatic kind of chorus and this grinding going on here. Breaks come in, completely changes the nature of breaks, right? When you have all of this other stuff going on. And then that lift. And that voice releases up there, together with that operatic, sort of cosmic operatic stuff. Cymbals. Very cool breakdown. Again, all these voices holding in and out of tin foil. A couple of different rhythmic elements. You have that tinny voice as well as this other squelcher one. And this dialogue, or both going off at each other. Answered by that sort of rip. So we'll just feel this rising, and it's gonna end with another riff, I believe. I mean, where do you go after that? It's some pretty dramatic, uh, cosmic cosmic stuff. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. So, right, as somebody who, again, I initially, right, I will admit to not liking as a child when I first heard it, and then getting really into, the delta traveling at the speed of thought, that kind of, really big scale. Um, again, operatic stuff, right? Like Juno Reactor, and, the bigger hallucinogen things. I mean, just where, the melodic content and this drama uh, comes in, but the extreme style and Planet Ben style, big rolling bass and just quantum noises from outer space. It's just unbelievable. Incredible storytelling, incredible music making, just a whole other thing. And, these are unfortunately the only two tracks that they produced together. So they stopped making music together. It's quite unfortunate because, of course, I mean, two great musical minds putting this stuff together. So it's just these two tracks and the two versions of each one for me are just this kind of pinnacle of certain quality and style of music making from that time. Just absolutely amazing. So I will sign off here, and I'm just going to play the vinyl released version of Itchy and Scratchy, which came out in '98. Perhaps one day both will come out again digitally. Who knows if such an arrangement could be made, but you will be hearing one or the other in my sets as long as I'm playing and the time is right. This is really, a time is right kind of thing. And, listening to this now, of course, it's really like this is nighttime stuff. And so there I was at, 4 in the afternoon playing it on street level in Vancouver in '98. But it was really because of the crunchy beats that I needed to do that as an entry point. And does seem to have worked. Anyway, I'm Mark DJ Solitaire, wrapping up episode 162 of Retro Goa Explorations and leaving you now with Fools and Tools, otherwise known as Fat, Itchy, and Scratchy.